President Donald Trump is choice of a new acting White House chief of staff once described him as a terrible human being. It has emerged. A video shows Mr Mulvaney making the disparaging remark in a debate shortly before the 2016 presidential election. Yes, I am supporting Donald Trump, but I am doing so despite the fact that I think he is a terrible human being, Mr Mulvaney says. He describes Mr. Trump, his then opponent, Hillary Clinton, as just as bad. Mr. Mulvaney,
51,
is a former Republican congressman, and the video, which was obtained by the Daily Beast, was taken during a debate with the Democratic challenger Frank Putin in York, South Carolina. He is currently director of the Office of Management and Budget and takes up his new role in January. And non-spokeswoman said the remarks had been made before Mr. Mulvaney had met Mr. Trump and were old news. The New York Times reported. Meghan Burry said Mr. Mulvaney both likes and respects the president, and he likes working for him. The White House has not responded. A Facebook post has also emerged from 2016, in which Mr. Mulvaney describes Mr. Trump as not a very good person. NBC reported Mr. Mulvaney was responding to the release of a videotape from 2005 in which Mr. Trump made obscene comments about women. I think one thing we learned about Donald Trump during this campaign is that he is not a very good person, Mr. Mulvaney wrote in the post. What he said in the audio tape is disgusting and indefensible. My guess is that he has probably said even worse. But he adds, I have decided that I do not particularly like Donald Trump as a person, but I am still voting for him, and I am still asking other people to do the same. And there is one simple reason for that. Hillary Clinton. Mr. Mulvaney replaces General John Kelly, who steps down at the end of the year. A Brazilian faith healer accused of sexually abusing more than 300 women is not considered to be a fugitive. Joel Teixeira, a foreigner known as Son of God, failed to comply with a court order giving him until
14.1600
GMT on Saturday to turn himself in. A dozen women have come forward in Brazil to accuse the prominent self-styled spiritual healer of sexually abusing them at his clinic. He is based in the central town of Bagdania, but has followers worldwide. Mr. Faria's lawyer, Alberto Doran, said he would report to the authorities, but did not say where or when. Mr. Doran said he would file an appeal on Monday. A Dutch photographer, Zahira Moz, told Global TV that he had manipulated her into performing sex acts and then raped her. In a statement to Global, Mr. Faria's office strongly denied the allegations. It said the subject-year-old had used his powers to treat thousands of people, and vehemently rejects allegations of any improper practice during his treatments. 9 Brazilian women, who remained anonymous, also told Global TV that the self-declared healer had abused them on the premise of transferring his cleansing energy. Some said they had been seeking a cure for depression when the alleged abuse took place. The related Global newspaper later said it had spoken to 2 more women with similar allegations. Mr. Faria, who is not a medical doctor, has previously been fined and jailed for operating without a license. He denied the accusations when speaking to a crowd of followers on Thursday at his center, declaring that he would comply with the law. As TV host Oprah Winfrey traveled to Brazil in 2013 to meet him and witnessed him performing his psychic surgery at his clinic west of the capital Brasilia. According to ABC News, Mr. Faria claims that the spirits of more than 30 doctors and other entities can enter his body, and that they perform the healings. Russian President Vladimir Putin has asked the government to take charge of rap music after a number of concerts were cancelled across the country. Efforts to ban rap were impossible, and so the state should play a greater role in controlling it, he said. The Ministry of Culture would find the best way to navigate youth concerts, he added. His comments come after Russian rapper Husky was arrested after several of his concerts were cancelled. In December, authorities in the southern city of Krasnodar called out his planned performance for extremism. The musician's real name, Dmitry Kuznetsov, was then jailed for 12 days after performing for fans on the roof of a car. Speaking at a meeting of the Presidential Council for Culture and Art in St. Petersburg, President Putin said the problem should be approached with great caution. However, what I really agree with is that if it is impossible to stop it, it should be taken over and navigated in a particular way, he said. The president expressed particular concern about drug abuse among young people. Rap and other modern forms of art are rested upon three pillars: sex, drugs and protest, he said. I am most worried about drugs. This is the way towards the degradation of a nation. Mr. Putin also said he was worried about bad language in rap, saying he had spoken to a linguist about it, while she had explained to him that swearing is a part of our language. Mr. Putin compared it to the human body, joking that we have all sorts of body parts, and it is not like we put them on display all the time. The Russian government has long had a complicated relationship with music. Feminist protest and Pussy Riot claims Russia, its intelligence service, poisoned member Pyotr Berthlev earlier this year. Under the Soviet Union, meanwhile, most Western pop and rock music was frowned on, and some Russian rock musicians faced persecution. Even classical musicians clashed with the state. Composer Dmitry Shostakovich was denounced twice under the leadership of Joseph Stalin. Sri Lanka's ousted Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe, has been sworn into office again, 2 months after being removed by the president. Mr. Wickremesinghe's supporters set off firecrackers as the ceremony took place behind closed doors. His surprise sacking by President Maithripala Sirisena plunged Sri Lanka into a political crisis. Mr. Wickremesinghe was replaced by a former president and ally of Mr. Sirisena, Mahinda Rajapaksa, but Mr. Rajapaksa was unable to command a parliamentary majority and resigned on Saturday. Journalists were not allowed to attend Sunday's swearing-in ceremony in President Sirisena's office, but a picture was tweeted by MP Harshan De Silva at RWUNB phone is SPM of Sri Lanka by President Maithripala's just now pick Twitter, .0 F1's the end of Twitter post by at Harshan De Silva. We thank the citizens of the country who fought the illegal seizure of power and ensured that democracy was restored. Mr. Wickremesinghe's United National Party UNP posted on Twitter. Mr. Wickremesinghe's spokesman said a new cabinet would be formed in the coming days. Sri Lanka had faced a government shutdown as the power struggle took hold, with Parliament failing to approve a budget for 2019. President Sirisena was once a party ally of Mr. Rajapaksa and served in his government. But in 2015, he teamed up with Ranil Wickremesinghe to defeat him in an election, and the pair went on to form a coalition government. However, the relationship turned sour and Mr. Sirisena in October turned on Mr. Wickremesinghe, sacking him in favor of Mr. Rajapaksa. Throughout the crisis, Mr. Wickremesinghe always maintained he was the rightful Prime Minister. On Thursday, Sri Lanka's Supreme Court ruled that President Sirisena had acted illegally in November by dissolving Parliament. and calling snap-polls. The crisis, which has provoked brawls in Parliament and sparked large protests, has been closely watched by regional powers in India, as well as the US, China, and the European Union. Parents of a teenage boy who took his own life have complained after their Catholic priest criticized him at the funeral for killing himself. Father Don Locke, who was died in the service, questioned whether Mason, a little boy or girl,
18,
would enter heaven, horrifying his parents and the family. The Archdiocese of Detroit have relieved Father Locke from funeral duties, but the family want him fired. Catholicism has traditionally taught that suicide is an unforgivable sin. Only recently have the Church said that extreme psychological stress could mean forgiveness for those who take their own lives. Mason,